Answer me without thinking for a long time. What would you call the situation when you don't poop for 3 months? I suspect that you immediately had associations with suffering and death. If, of course, you are a person and not some Edward Cullen or, well, anyone else who does not poop. I don't know. But for bees, such a long wait is a routine thing, as well as the daily killing of those who are unlucky enough to be near their toilet for hippos, or fighting people with their own poop for termites. Today, I will tell you, my little researcher, how a trip to the bathroom for number 2 can save lives and, on the contrary, put people in danger. So sit comfortably on the toilet seat, give us a like, and let's get started. Termites occupy a leading position in the top of the most disgusting poopers that have been haunting humanity for many years. Just imagine they managed to learn how to process their own waste products into antibiotics. These literally shitty drugs make them invulnerable to biological weapons that humans use against them. They can be stopped, but not for long, and it's almost impossible to destroy termites. Bacteria living in termite droppings can overcome almost any infestation. In this way, insects are somewhat similar to humans, since bacteria that protect us from various diseases also live in our intestines. But the termites were able to pull the process outside, and we can't do that. So we get sick and eat antibiotics in packs. By the way, if people do not stop using antibiotics for any reason, it can lead to disaster. Already today, many diseases simply do not respond to treatment, and by 2050, this will lead to the death of 300 million people and cost the world economy $100 trillion. Of course, this is my salary for the month, but I still wouldn't want to give it away. Insects and the result of their vital activity are, of course, a big problem, but hippos can arrange a real smelly apocalypse. Actually, they do it regularly. On the border between Kenya and Tanzania is the Mara River. Something strange happens sometimes. Once the researchers noticed that when the river rises, tons of dead fish appear on its banks. At first, the researchers blamed farmers who sprayed pesticides, but hippos turned out to be the culprit. For the first time, people are not to blame. Somehow, it's really strange. These huge creatures decided to turn the river into a public toilet, thereby killing all living things around. At night, hippos roam the fields looking for something tasty to munch on, and during the day return to the rivers to cool off and protect themselves from sunburn. Unfortunately, they do not use sunblock. But hippos do not just lie in the water, they also process what they've been eating and pour it all into the water. The expression, "don't spit in the well, you might drink from it later," seems to be turned by hippos on, "you know you will." Just imagine every day, approximately 4,000 hippos dump about 9,000 kilograms of waste into the water. That's why there's such a sign in zoos near the enclosures with hippos. Hippos are real feces factories. In the dry season, when the river becomes shallow, its bottom literally turns into a mixture of ammonia, methane, hydrogen sulfide, and other substances that you don't really want to enter. These substances displace all the oxygen, but that's not all. During the rainy season, all this goodness is washed downstream, reducing the oxygen levels throughout the river to the point where fish die by the thousands. Not the noblest death, to be honest. Well, let's go back to the bees. The fact is that they're very tidy insects that keep order in their native hive. They don't have sewers, so they almost always go outside to make number 2. Most often, bees do this simply in the air, or leave their gifts in flowers. It's their waste that makes the smell of flowers so pleasant and sweet. It's not really, but be aware of what you're breathing in when you smell flowers. Sometimes the bees do not manage to reach the flower, then yellowish traces appear on the outer walls of the hive. They usually don't have problems in the summer, but what to do in the winter if it's too cold to go to the toilet and it's freezing outside? The situation becomes deadly, but you can get out of it. The first option, the bees fly outside and does its business, but at the same time it risks dying from hypothermia. At a temperature of about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, bees lose the ability to fly long distances. Having flown too far, an insect may never return home, and even Hemingway would not have written such a touching story. But there is also another option. When the valves are completely torn off, the bee can make a pile right in the hive. This is unheard of arrogance, as only queen bees have the right to do this anywhere, but that's why they're queens. Actually, almost the same thing happens with people. But other ordinary bees without royal blood cannot do this, and their unsanitary behavior can lead to the spread of diseases and the death of the entire colony. That is why bees have developed the ability to keep everything in themselves for several months. That's why bees are waiting for the spring and the first warmth for more than anything in the world. Only terminally ill bees can afford to relieve themselves in the hive, but this also carries a deadly danger because diseases will spread faster. Therefore, sick bees can simply be thrown out of the hive and into the street. If bees are so smart, why didn't they build toilets? For example, ants solved this problem millions of years ago. Although ant nests are somewhat similar to beehives, they have one important difference, namely, toilets. A group of researchers studying ants found that these insects like to do their business only in certain corners of the house, which serve exclusively for this purpose. Usually, ants get rid of all garbage. They pull out dead relatives, leftover food, but not their own waste. Scientists believe that ants are too intelligent, so if they leave their feces at home, then it's not dangerous. It's possible that their poop may serve some purpose, but we do not yet know which one exactly. There is an opinion that ants can extract useful elements from a pile of feces to feed young larvae. God, what an abomination. Ants can also use waste as fertilizer to grow certain types of mushrooms. No, they don't get high, but use these mushrooms to fight diseases. The bee has one sworn enemy, and its name is the hornet. These huge, terrifying monsters constantly try to rob hives. Sometimes they can destroy an entire colony just to feed on honey. What other monster is capable of such meanness? But bees also defend themselves to the last. For example, Chinese wax bees have learned to defend themselves with their own feces. They smear waste products around the entrance to the hive, which repels hornets. Moreover, they can use other people's litter that they find just on the street. So be aware of the fact that if you don't clean up after your own dog, its droppings can save the lives of innocent bees. Surprisingly, this protection works, although it does not look very aesthetically pleasing. But the more bees work on decorating the facade of the hive, the more likely it is that the colony will survive. Hornets, although they are immoral monsters, are disgusted by it and fly away from such hives. Maybe the smell repels them, or maybe it blocks their chemical receptors. Be that as it may, poop saves lives sometimes. The benefit of excrement is clear, but there's also harm from it. Imagine the beautiful Taj Mahal, a majestic temple built of white marble more than 400 years ago. For 4 centuries, it faced all kinds of threats. Its walls turned yellow from the dirty air, and the facade was gradually worn out due to the fact that tourists constantly touched it with dirty hands. Gosh, those people. And recently, the building was attacked by a new enemy, namely, a whole swarm of beetles. These insects were breeding in the nearby river, so they flew back and forth, constantly bombarding the sacred temple with their godless waste. Because of this, snow white marble is covered with green spots. Flying insects are normally eaten by fish living in the river, but the dirty air and drought have wiped out most of them. Add to this algae blooms and ashes from a nearby crematorium, which are dumped into the river. This provided the insects with a lot of food, so they got a lot of offspring and have continued to desecrate the cultural monument. It would be possible to simply wash the building, but the locals are in no hurry to call Mr. Clean. The fact is that the walls of the Taj Mahal are covered with small ornaments and patterns that can be damaged during restoration. But even without insects, people have enough fun. Did you know that there is a precedent in history when a failed trip to the toilet almost sank a Nazi submarine? It happened in April 1945, shortly before the capitulation of Germany. The submarine was cruising off the Scottish coast, doing its usual Nazi routine, until suddenly a miracle happened. The boat was truly a technological marvel. The toilet compartment was especially thought out. All waste went into special pipes where it was washed under high pressure and then simply thrown into the sea. In those days, submarines had to surface to get rid of waste, but this boat was the best. Still, technology didn't help. One morning, Captain Schlitt went into the deep-sea toilet but turned the wrong valves, and this instantly ruined the flushing system. The room began to fill with seawater, as well as what the captain had left in the pipes a few minutes ago. To save itself, the boat rose to the surface, where British patrols were already waiting for it. Another story of how excrement saved the world. By the way, this is not a joke. It is quite possible that it will happen in the future. Did you know that there's a special repository where hundreds and even thousands of samples of human waste are stored? This is how scientists hope to protect the world's microbial diversity. The researchers also included that the increase in the number of various diseases may be associated with changes in the human microbiome. Simply put, over the years, the number of beneficial microorganisms in our intestines decreases. The more excrement we save now, the easier it will be for us to fight diseases in the future. The last fact for today is not so much related to secretions through the intestines, so much to the fact that it was not possible to get out of it. Doctors in Singapore once found an octopus stuck in the esophagus of a man who complained of stomach pain. The day before, the man ate seafood and swallowed a live octopus. Of course, it died inside, but stuck to the esophagus and did not want to come out. It took a long time to get the poor thing out. Tubes, hoses, forceps, and the very long fingers of several nurses were used. In the end, the octopus was caught, but the man would never be same again. The conclusion is simple. Do not eat raw octopus and respect the smelly substances that come out of your body. Maybe they'll save someone's life. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back very soon with new, crazy, and interesting facts.